Long before humans settled the lands of Westeros, the continent was populated by the Children of the Forest, a mysterious and magical people, small in stature but dark and beautiful. Born with acute hearing and vision, the children weaved leaves, vines, and flowers into their hair, and were fond of singing, making music so beautiful it brought a tear to any who listened. A Stone Age culture, they spoke the true tongue and created hidden villages in forests, caves, and crannogs, carving faces into weirwoods all across the continent, believing that when they died, their spirits would live on in the trees. Worshipping the old gods, many of the children possessed strange and powerful magics, like their skin changers who could send their consciousness into the body of an animal, or those born with the green sight, giving them prophetic dreams and visions. Though these diminutive forest dwellers lived alongside the giant race, who called them the Squirrel People, their interactions were not always peaceful, with some violence known to have occurred between them. Yet in time, both these races faced a far more menacing threat from the first men of Essos, who began to migrate through the Arm of Dorne, roughly 12,000 years before Aegon's conquest. A Bronze Age people, the first men brought new technologies and cultural practices to the continent, introducing metal, horses, a writing system, and pagan gods. Though the children were initially welcoming, they grew hostile as the first men cut down their forests and sacred weirwood trees, leading to 2,000 years of war between them. Fighting a desperate campaign to defend their homeland, the children used magic and wielded weapons of obsidian, but their enemies were too numerous, larger, stronger, and better armed. According to legend, Brandon of the Bloody Blade, who some believe was the father of Bran the Builder, slaughtered so many of the children at Blue Lake, the area was renamed Red Lake. Losing the war, some legends claim the children attempted to cut off the flow of migration from the east by performing a magical ritual to shatter the Arm of Dorne, thereby creating the Islands of the Stepstones. Yet even this was not enough to turn the tide of battle, and the native Westerosi found themselves retreating further north, where they once again attempted a ritual, possibly from the Children's Tower of Moat Cailin, calling upon the Hammer of the Waters to shatter the neck of the continent and split the landmass in two. But they failed in their mission and merely flooded the territory, creating swamps and marshlands. Eventually, a peace agreement was negotiated on the Isle of Faces, which gave the children dominion over the deep woods, while the first men took the open lands and promised to cease their burning of weirwood trees. In time, this peace allowed for many of the first men to adopt the worship of the old gods. Though the Pact brought an age of peace, the children faced yet another threat when a terrible winter and great darkness fell over the continent for a generation, bringing forth famine and terror as the mysterious Others, or White Walkers, invaded from the far north. Tall and gaunt, with skin as pale as milk and eyes that shine bright blue, they wielded razor-thin swords of ice and were able to raise both human and animal dead to fight in their armies. Facing such an enemy, stories say the first men were only spared total annihilation because of the efforts of the last hero, who went on a quest to find the Children of the Forest, seeking alliance against their common foe. With the children at their side and the discovery of dragon glass as an effective weapon against the White Walkers, the Night's Watch led the people of Westeros to victory at the Battle for the Dawn, pushing the others back into the lands of Always Winter. And while the children aided in their defeat, some have come to suggest that they were also to blame for the attack, as the White Walkers may have originated in the Dawn Age from a magical ritual involving dragon glass, which transformed humans into this new race. Hoping to use them as a weapon of war against their first men enemies, the others eventually turned against the children who created them and became a threat to every living being in Westeros. After they retreated north, stories say Bran the Builder raised a massive wall to keep guard against future attacks, with the Children of the Forest casting powerful spells upon the ice, and initiated a yearly tradition of giving 100 dragon glass daggers to the Night's Watch. Though the Children of the Forest were diminishing in numbers, they continued to interact with the First Men throughout the Age of Heroes, with some of their kind supporting the Warg King of Sea Dragon Point until he was defeated by House Stark. Yet as the years went on, the doom of the children awoke in the east, as the Dragon Lords of the Valyrian Freehold began expanding westward, leading the Andals of Andalos to migrate across the Narrow Sea in search of a new homeland. Believed to have occurred between 6 and 2,000 years before conquest, the tall and fair-haired men of Essos descended upon the first men and children with weapons of iron and suits of plate, fighting in the name of their seven-faced god. Relentless in their pursuit of land, they found great success, spreading their religion and culture throughout the southern half of the continent. Yet while they fought wars against the first men, they also formed alliances and intermarried, options which were not available to the Children of the Forest, who were slaughtered to near extinction. Almost immediately upon landing in Westeros, the Andals began burning their sacred weirwood trees and killing their people wherever encountered, and so as the first men rallied to defend themselves, King Durin the 21st of the Stormlands formed the Weirwood Alliance with the Children of the Forest, uniting their forces to defeat the invaders at Blackbog, the Misty Wood, and the Howling Hill. It was believed King Gwaine IV Gardner also reached out to the children for aid, while another group of native Westerosi in the Riverlands used their magic to send 100 wolves upon the Andals at Whitewood. Unfortunately, these victories were few, as other legends speak of men like Eric the Kinslayer, who orchestrated the massacre at Highheart, killing the children and their First Man allies before cutting down their sacred trees. Though the Andals eventually conquered the Riverlands, they failed to capture the Isle of Faces, which was defended by the Green Men sworn to protect their weirwoods, and as a result, some believe the Children of the Forest who dwelt in the area may have survived by seeking refuge with their allies on the island. As the years went on and the Andals gained more territory, the dwindling population of children were forced to flee into the north, where First Men rule still held strong. Though the Andals also attempted to conquer the lands of House Stark, their forces were thrown back every time, with some believing that a group of children lived in the marshlands of the Neck alongside the Crennog men, helping them protect the north from invasion. In time, hostilities between the Andals and First Men diminished, and the children became figures of legend, with many believing they never existed at all. Though some of them lived for a time in the north, they soon vanished from there as well, with the few that remained living beyond the wall. Largely keeping to themselves, they only occasionally interacted with the free folk, like when the kings Gendel and Gorn supposedly mediated a dispute between a clan of children and family of giants. Many years later in 300 AC, when young Bran Stark traveled north to train under the Three-Eyed Crow, his party found over 60 of the children living in a cavern underground protected by a magical barrier. Love audiobooks? Then be sure to check out Audible, where they have the world's largest collection available. Simply sign up through the link in the description box below and get 2 free audiobooks to start out. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx, like Cursed Walder, the Crimson Shadow, Knight of the Old Republic, Fred Heartless, Knight of Iron and Ice, Michael the Stallion Sixsmith, and Sir Pagelot the Death Dealer. If you'd like to help CivilizationEx, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and click on the links to see more.